Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome back to Dyslexia Nigeria's Instagram live show. We're so happy to be back this week. Thank you to everyone who has uh, been with us this entire time, and thank you for joining again today. Today we have a really amazing guest, as always. I would allow him to do the honors of introducing himself to us, but if you have seen our post about him, you definitely know that this conversation is one you don't want to miss. He is quite an amazing person, and during the conversation, of course, you would learn more about him and his amazing work. On this show, we talk about everything dyslexia. We try and create awareness about dyslexia. We speak to parents who have children with dyslexia. We speak to professionals in the field of dyslexia. We speak to teachers, and we speak to adults with dyslexia. And speaking of adults with dyslexia, our guest today is one, and you would learn more about him very soon. I can see that he's here, so I'm just going to. I hope you're all doing well. Good morning if you are in morning. Good afternoon if you are afternoon, and good evening if you are evening. Okay, I think I already accepted it. Hmm. All right, let's see if I can do this instead. So for some reason, I'm unable, or I have accepted the request a couple of times, um, but I'm going to send a request now. Let's see if that works instead.
Hey Jenny, how are you?
Hi, well, thanking you.
Very well, very well.
Oh, I can't see you.
Let's see. How about now?
No, but I know what's going on. Don't worry. This happens to me sometimes where I can only hear the voice, but I can't see the face. But when the video is out, it then comes out as both of us. So not to worry.
Okay.
We we can go ahead. It's a bit uh it's a bit tricky, but it does that to me a couple of times. I don't know if anyone experiences that, but we can go ahead. It's fine. Thank you so much once again for agreeing to come on and speak with us about your amazing experience.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work that Dyslexia Nigeria is doing. It's been great to follow you online. I see you've had a bunch of really powerful figures in this space.
Mm.
My friend Jared S. Blank, I see he was on a live a while back.
Yes,
Um,
you are.
yeah, and so I appreciate being able to chat with everyone.
Thank you so much. Um, I mean, we're more than honored that you accepted to do this with us. So just to go right into the conversation, I don't really usually read bios here because I end up destroying it.
Okay.
So I just tend to ask our guests to introduce themselves so that they introduce themselves the best way that they want to introduce. So could you kindly just briefly introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, so the titles I tend to use most is that I'm a poet, a speaker, and an advocate.
Great.
So I'm LeDerick Horne. I am um, an advocate who, here in the United States and a little bit internationally, I work to make the world a better place for folks with a variety of different differences. Um,
Right.
and the focus of my work is primarily in education and special education.
Okay.
Um, I'm a I'm a poet. I have two collections of poetry out. I'm co-author of the book Empowering Students with Hidden Disabilities, A Path to Pride and Success. And I've recently released a video course called A Path to Pride and Success, where I take the 20 years of professional experience and many decades of personal experience and put it together
Right.
into um, easy steps that families and educators can follow to help empower their young people.
Great, great. I mean, like I said, we are completely honored, and I think you left one part out. You co-host a podcast called Black and Dyslexic.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm the co-host of the Black and Dyslexic podcast, and my
Right,
good friend Winifred A. Winston, who's a dyslexia advocate in Baltimore, Maryland.
right.
The podcast is really her idea, and I was fortunate that she decided to bring me on. Um, I'm also board chair and co-founder of an organization called All In for Inclusive Education, and we do work to create more inclusive educational environments to make sure that students with a variety of needs are able to thrive in our schools. Um, yeah, I can go on for a while.
Great. I mean, like I said, we are really honored to have you here. You are the embodiment of advocacy, and it's just great to have someone who has done this for so long to speak about it. So once again, thank you. Um, so now I'm going to have us rewind back a lot backwards. Can you tell us about your early experience with dyslexia? How did you find out that you were dyslexic?
So the very first time anyone ever used the word dyslexia to describe me, I was probably 22 years old, and
Okay.
it was after 5 years of being in college and transitioning out of a local community college and going on to a university. And I had a reassessment done, the full neuropsych. And it was there that the tech afterwards said, yeah, it shows up here, you're dyslexic. Now, prior to that, when I was first born, my mother just knew that I was going to do great in school. I was, always a child who could like tell great stories. And so
Right.
she just thought when I got to school, I was going to do amazing. But almost immediately, I began to struggle. In the very first grade, I was struggling so much to do the work that I had to do the first grade twice.
Oh.
And then, yeah, and then got into the third grade, and there was this moment where a teacher was asking me to read out loud, and I wasn't able to do it.
Mm,
Wasn't able to follow along with the work as well as everybody else. And it was from there that the first evaluations that I ever received were done. I was initially labeled as being neurologically impaired, which is a fairly common label that were given to particularly Black boys here in the United States when I was growing up. Um,
right.
and my mother even remembers like hearing that label and thinking like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for my child?
Mm,
Um, but I carry that label of being neurologically impaired, being labeled as having a learning disability throughout my entire time through school, and I struggled with it. I really struggled with it. I was placed in a separate class at the end of the hall. I was in classes that were sort of improvised closets, and made to feel like I was less than and not as intelligent or didn't have the same potential as other students. And I was fortunate that I've always been really resilient. And I think a lot of that comes from the support that I received from my family and from my larger community. And kind of towards the end of my time in high school, I went through a really rough emotional period. I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues. I was wrestling with this identity of, being a student who was in special ed, but also
mm,
feeling like I had a lot of potential. And I was able to push through that, and then came up with this wild idea that I was going to go to college, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have any models to really look at of people who were like me, who were
right.
facing the same sort of challenges, who went on to a university. But I started getting real vocal that that was what I was going to do, and so I was fortunate that my IEP team, the team of professionals, helping me in school, listened to me and gave me a pretty good plan to be able to transition out of high school into a local community college, a local county college that had an amazing support program for students who were dyslexic and had ADHD. I really threw myself into that program. And it was from there that I really started to blossom as a student. Um, but yeah, but those first, those early days were, they were filled with a lot of me expending emotional energy trying to pass for normal, trying
Yeah.
to be like everybody else, and also just wrestling with a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I certainly can understand what that feels like. You spoke briefly about how your family was a huge support, despite not fully understanding what was going on. Would you say that the encouragement and support from a family member or family and friends goes a long way when going through those difficulties? Because it's one thing to understand that you are going through difficulties in school, but you get home and the closest people to you don't try and ease those difficulties out. They sort of put more pressure and make it worse. It can really go the wrong way. So would you say that the support from family and friends did help you a lot?
Yeah, I was fortunate that I can think back, and I was surrounded by amazingly caring educators. You know, my first special ed teacher was a lady named Miss Priscilla Yates, and Miss Yates had a teacher's aide named Miss Norsha, and they were both, really good educators. But I knew overwhelmingly that both of those women loved us, cared about us, all of their students, and they had very high expectations for how we were going to show up in the world. But unfortunately, they were plugged into a system that didn't value people whose minds work differently, right? They were plugged into a system where, they thought that the best thing to do was to sort of put us in a classroom separate from everybody else. And so, yeah, and then, at home, my father was an educator. My father was a health and physical education uh, teacher and a really well-known track and cross country coach. Um, Both of my parents had degrees. They valued education. Um, but the experience that I was having was so unlike, what they had gone through in school.
Yeah,
They didn't have the experience, just sort of knowing what it meant to deal with someone with these sort of learning challenges. Um,
yeah,
but overwhelmingly, they knew, like, it was instilled in me, like, you're going to go on and you're going to be a great person. You're going to do good things in
right,
this world. Um,
right,
and so, yeah, having that those levels of high expectations, I think, was really key for me.
right. And I really like the fact that, despite the fact that they didn't quite understand what was going on, you still had the support, you still had the encouragement, you still had the backing to go and do whatever you wanted to do. They were always going to be there for you, especially because they don't know what it is. They haven't experienced it, like you said. So it's really good, and I'm happy that you had those early support from the people who you cared about mostly. Um, I see that someone here says the system gave you a privilege. I'm not entirely sure what you mean. But um, I guess while you were talking, you must have said something to have prompted that.
Yeah,
Um,
elaborate some
but
more. TD official one. I see you in
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I'm so used to not trying to pronounce people's handles, so I just go straight to the the comment. Okay, so you are. I mean, it's quite. What would I say? Is the irony of it that you are a poet, but you struggle with reading, writing, and spelling. Um, do you still struggle with those things?
Oh yeah, every day, every day. I mean, um, I think it's one of the sort of misconceptions we have to break down.
Okay.
Um, so I have very poor, like we call it a digit span, right? So I can't remember a bunch of numbers. I don't trust myself with mental math, but I have a degree in mathematics, right? I graduated with honors. Um, Once I was given a calculator to help speed up the addition, subtraction, the multiplication, and division, the higher order math was easy. Calculus was easy. Um, um, yeah, I'm a poet and I'm dyslexic and I struggle with spelling. I struggle with reading, but I'm not entirely unlike other, really well-known poets. um, it is not uncommon for our great writers to be folks who have struggled with it with language, and I would even argue that it is in the struggle, like the way you build a muscle is through resistance, right? And so for those of us who have struggled with language, I think it oftentimes sets us up to be, those cultural workers, those people who are able to use language in ways that other people can't. But no, I still wrestle with it. Now, what has been the godsend for me has been technology. I was reflecting back. I was like, man, I remember being in like in primary school, and there was all this emphasis on like handwriting and like in cursive and everything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but this was a time when they were like preparing you to write handwritten letters that were going to be sent in the post, and take 3 days to get to somebody, because nobody
Okay.
envisioned we were going to have these little devices in our pockets that could allow us to send messages all over the world, right? Thank God for autocorrect, right? And then prediction, right? And all these other things. And so a,
Really.
a lot of the challenges that I have around spelling, as far as like my everyday operations, are sort of negated by the technology that I use. Um,
Right.
uh, the big thing that I wrestle with now as an adult and as a professional, um, are um, challenges around executive functioning, and I think that's something that a lot of us dyslexics that we wrestle with. Just knowing when to start and stop tasks, how to take really large, complicated projects and how to break them down into smaller, more manageable pieces. Having to deal with the anxiety that comes with having to navigate through sequencing events. Um,
Right.
that's something that I wrestle with, but even with that, it's the utilization of a calendar. I have a team of people who I rely on,
Of course.
to help with scheduling and, making sure that, I do a lot of talks, a lot of presentations all over the United States. I don't book my own travel. I don't, I tend not to talk to clients and deal with the invoicing and all that other kind of stuff, right? Like, I have other people to help me do that. And I
Yeah.
invest in real estate, and even with that, I have a property management company. Like I have other people that I lean on. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the advantages of having dyslexia. And if you are
Mhm.
able to be successful, right? If you're able to navigate through all the gauntlet that many of us have to go through, is
Yeah.
that you realize that you have to be able to ask for help. You have to be comfortable asking for help. And you have to surround yourself with people who are stronger in areas where you find challenging. That
Of course.
is that's the primary game that I'm playing right now.
I mean, and it's great. It is great. That's definitely something that we do preach a lot over here at Dyslexia Nigeria. When you find certain things as your weaknesses, there's really no need to bit further on it. You can very well get people who are great at those things, who have more strengths in those areas than you do, and have them do it, and while you focus on other things, because then all of those, they take your time and they take your energy and they take your self belief, and they break it into bits. And while you really don't need that, so you go ahead and do other things. So I really like that you explain that in details. Thank you very much for that. Um, Can you share a defining moment in your journey where you realized how much impact you have on others?
Hmm. So I think there are a few. So what's easy, what's interesting the way you phrased it, defining moment.
Yeah.
Um, the I remember saying my first poems, right? I remember uh, like I was in this support program at a local county college, and I remember my counselor Susan saying to me to stop worrying about spelling and just write. And from that, waking up in the middle of the night writing my first poems, and then taking this pile of papers to her and saying, hey, I think I'm a poet. And then her helping me find my first open mic and getting on stage and sharing these ideas and seeing the reaction from the crowd. um, and then once I graduated from college, one of the first sort of jobs that I had was that I worked as a consultant for the New Jersey uh, State Department of Education's Office of Special Education. And I
Right.
was a part of an initiative um, teaching self advocacy skills and leadership experiences for students with a variety of different needs. And and I remember standing on that stage and sharing my story and sharing these poems and seeing the reaction that those students had. And then even more recently, I've worked with the state of Nevada's Department of Education, their Office of Inclusive Education, for probably 16 or 17 years now. And throughout that time, we've hosted this the Nevada um, student what is it, Student Transition Leadership Summit.
Okay.
And at that event, we get young people from all over the state who show up and they learn about services and they learn about supports. And more than anything, they're inspired by folks like me who are kind of veterans, but also just inspired by each other, being able to connect with each other and, be in a safe space. And so after doing that for several years, like just before the pandemic, the state hired about 25 of the young people that had come up through those summits to be young adult facilitators to go back into their old high schools and to begin training those students on how to run their IEP meetings, on
Wow.
being better self advocates, and addressing issues around transition into the adult world um, directly with students. And so, yeah, and maybe it's front of mind because I just was in a planning meeting yesterday with the team in the state, but it's been amazing to see some of those folks who were high school students, right, who are
Right.
now very much grounded in this work and are using their experiences to empower the next generation. And just to be a part of, kind of building that legacy has been very powerful.
I mean, I can't even imagine what that would feel like. I really, really think that that is such a great idea to take the product um, of an organization and take them back to where they came from, so that they can help the people who are currently there. It just goes to show it's a beautiful representation to see that you've done it and you came from here, so maybe I could do it as well. And that's just beautiful. You have a diverse group of people that you speak to because of your work. How are you able to tailor your message when you're speaking to them? You speak to educators, policymakers, students. What is that? What is that thing that is able to tailor your message when you're speaking to each person or each group?
Yeah, so I'm reminded of the poet Walt Whitman's line that I am large, I contain multitudes. Um, uh, I draw from a bunch of different experiences, and I'm fortunate um, that um, I've lived a what I think of as a relatively robust life, right? So. Um, and I can just tap in, those different spaces. And I do my best to listen to people, right? And so
Mm.
to be able to show up and use the language that's going to connect most effectively to them, right? And so, like, yeah, we're in a kind of relatively professional kind of setting right now, right? I got my college shirt on. It's early in the morning, right? But when I'm asked to like go into an elementary school and talk to kids, right? It's like I'm a lot more animated, right? I know like that's how I have to show up to hold the little
Yeah,
ones
attention.
attention for a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. Um, I'm doing work with the state of Delaware and in inner city Wilmington, and working at a charter school with students who have a lot of challenges that they're facing, on a daily basis: food insecurity, housing insecurity, and these are older students. Like, there's a different way you have to show up, um, um, but you have to be authentic, and I've learned that. And then, when having conversations with folks in the business world or the political world, there's just a different sort of approach to messaging that you have to bring. But what I have found um, to be overwhelmingly true is that poetry tends to be a great way to cut through um, a lot of a lot of those audiences,
Right.
and to be able to speak to people's hearts. Poetry is a great way to convey both information but also emotion, and it works everywhere. It works everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm able to shift between those different spaces.
thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much for breaking it down. It does make a lot of sense. I was thinking about it, like, how's he going? I mean, I saw you before the live started, so I know you are wearing your, like you call it, your college shirt on. And I thought, it's just an Instagram live. Why is he all suited up or looking very professional?
Because this is
But
dyslexia in Nigeria. I had to show up right. Come on, I can't have my
thank
brother
you.
my
Thank
brothers and sisters on the continent saying that he showed up in a raggedy t-shirt.
we I completely understand that, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much. This is I do it does make a lot of sense now. Um, um, Authentic, very good quality of a good teacher. Yes, yes, very much. You are. You like you were talking earlier, you had mentioned that, while growing up, dyslexia was not so much of a word that was being used. It certainly was there, but maybe not so much of a word. um, how do you think that dyslexia has sort of, what's the word would I use, transitioned into something that is more known? What would you say about the awareness level from when you found out that you had difficulties with reading, writing, and spelling and calculations and all of that, to now? What would you say about the awareness level?
Yeah, that awareness level, it's kind of like real estate, right? Like, all real estate is local. So, I think that awareness level, it really depends on kind of where you are, right? So, um, I think that I I would say, for the most part, particularly in the Western world, I would say that dyslexia is being more and more accepted, right? You're getting more and more people who are speaking out about it, particularly high profile folks. Um, and Yeah, and then I think really all over the world, right? Folks are doing, and your organization is one of those folks who are in the fight around building more awareness. We're
Mhm.
able to utilize new tools like Instagram, like social media, to be able to um, share different stories about the dyslexic experience. When I was a kid, I remember people saying to me, like, Tom Cruise had dyslexia and Cher had dyslexia. But these were also folks who were like highly pedestalized. I mean, these are some of the best entertainers in the world.
Yeah.
Um, One of the amazing things about, I think, um, the world now is that it just feels a lot smaller. Like, we're able to sort of reach out and connect with people in much more meaningful ways. So I think the overall awareness is increasing, but I still think there's a lot of work to do. I
Language.
I know I know there are plenty of places where you'll show up, and if you say you have dyslexia, the response will be, well, you just need to work harder, right? And I think there's this lack of understanding that like no, like all the dyslexics I know are some of the hardest working people in whatever
Very.
they're doing, whether they be in school or whether it be professionally. Like we put the work in, we show up. I mean, I spent an hour or so yesterday evening, prepping for this. I was up, I'm up early to begin with, but like I'm gonna make sure that I show up, right? I'm gonna put the work in,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
and that tends to be true for just about everybody that I meet who
Mm-hmm.
learn differently, because we know, like, we have to, right? Like we don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Absolutely. And so, um, the level of awareness, I think, is overall getting better, but there's still a whole lot of work to do. There's still, folks that just think about dyslexia as people like seeing letters backwards, right? They don't understand really kind of like from a neurological standpoint, what's going on within our minds. Um, and there's still a lot of prejudice, a lot of ableism that we have to counter, where um, yeah, where folks just they don't realize what our potential is, and how, in given the right spaces, the right supports, how so many of us can thrive.
Of course. Of course. And of course, that was one of the reasons why I asked earlier if you still struggle with reading, writing, and spelling, because some people think that dyslexia is just something that happens to children and somehow it just magically goes away when they become adults. No, it doesn't. Your struggles, they do improve, but they don't go away. They're still very much there. And like you said, we put in as much, way, a lot more work in with whatever we need to do.
Yeah, and
And
not to cut you off, but the studies around self advocates, so that like what it looks like when you're a child and what it looks like when you're an adult, right? Like the studies around self advocates, people who are really able to stand up for themselves and have agency in this world. One of the things that they show is that what we tend to do is to not like continually put ourselves in places where our deficits and challenges are going to show up, right?
wait,
We figure out how to be in spaces and to have careers that play upon our strengths.
Grant.
And I think that is one of the things that is really key for all of us, is to one be, don't just focus on the deficits, just don't focus on the things you can't do. You have to be aware about what your strengths are, and then really lean into those, right? Invest the
Yeah,
time, invest the energy, build your life around those places um, where yes, you have passion, but where you can see where you're like really, really strong. Um, and so like as we get older, no, of course dyslexia doesn't go away. I'll be dyslexic until I die, but I'm able to put myself in spaces where my deficits and impairments aren't as big of a deal. And I think that's, it's one of the things that, like, when you're from like kindergarten to 12th grade before you graduate,
right.
everyone is controlling your space, right?
Exactly.
They're saying, here are the classes you have to take. Here's where you sit in the school, right? Like, here's how the material needs to be done or presented to you, right? It's like a lot of control. For those of us who are able to go on to university, one of the things that tends to happen is that we get this freedom, right? You're not a morning
Yep.
person, you don't have to go to class in the morning, right? You can take all your classes at night, right? Um, if there's a focus that you have as far as a line of study or a career path, you can zero in on that, and you don't have to do all these things that you find challenging. You're not completely freed of it, but it becomes a lesser degree. And then when you're out here in the professional world, or seeking out a career, you've got even oftentimes even more freedom, more things that you can pick from that you want to do to play into your strengths. And so it's that
Yeah.
it's that sort of freedom, that I think, like, tends to make life a bit easier for those of us, as we get older. But it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It's a part of who you are. It's, as ingrained in me as the color of my eyes or the texture of my
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for all that. I certainly don't need to add anything else to that. I just wanted to give a shout out to TD underscore official one. Thank you so much for your engagement. I can see you're pretty much really engaged in the conversation. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. I would do my possible best to read them out, and we will have our very wonderful guest answer them. Um, I want us to move a bit into educators, educators and school. What better way can they support students with dyslexia, especially with transitioning from um, uh, we call it secondary school over here. I believe it's probably high
Yeah, high
school.
school, second, right? Yes.
To university, or even from university to the workplace, because there's two organizations, or I'm not sure what to call it right now. They're very different. The workplace and the school are very different. And most of the times when we leave school, no one really talks about what the workplace has in store for us. And if you have dyslexia, when you get there, it's going to be really tricky for you to navigate through it. So, what is that support, or what should be done in order to prepare the minds of young people when they transition from school to the workplace?
Well, the first thing is that educators have to have high expectations, right?
Right,
Um, you have to when you see that kid struggling, even if he's 7 years old, 8 years old, and he's having a really hard time, you have to look at that young person and see a college student. You have to see a business owner. You have to see someone who is going to get through those challenges and eventually become a functional adult who is going to give back to this world, who is going to be a parent, a member of their community, right? That expectation has to be high. I think,
right,
unfortunately, so many of us get labeled as being like young people with behavioral issues, right? We get labeled as being, the problem student.
right.
But we
Of
have
course.
we have educators have to have more than anything to begin with. They have to have those high expectations. Um, the other thing that I think is important is exposure, right? So, um, particularly when it comes to preparing young people for that transition, either into university or into the world of work. Um, what our larger society tends to do is to start putting these sort of blinders on us, and it starts putting these walls around us,
Right,
and that's true for everybody, but particularly if you've got any sort of challenges in your life, anything you're wrestling with, you start limiting what your choices are, right? And those limits are oftentimes informed by what we're exposed to. So I think part of the anxiety, the depression that I was wrestling with in primary school when I was trying to figure out what was going to happen after graduation, after receiving my diploma, um, was that I hadn't had the exposure to know that university had a place for me, that there were supports that I needed that would be available for me, because no one had made that movie. Nobody ever gave me that book, right? Right? Like, I didn't have Instagram Live. I didn't get to see, LeDerick. I didn't get to talk to Jenny, right? Like I didn't get that sort of exposure to know that that was a possible path. The same is true for work, right? A lot of us are not going to see um, folks who are, making a living wage, owning their own businesses, being highly successful. We're oftentimes not seeing that as a career path. I grew up thinking I was going to be like a carpenter or a janitor. And I come from a very long line of carpenters and builders and farmers, so I don't demean that work at all.
yeah,
Um, but it was depressing to think that those were my only options, right? So
limitations.
yeah, and so giving our young people exposure, and one of the things that I really speak to here is we need to take our young people to college campuses, right? Definitely while they're in primary school, but I would say even earlier, and take them into the office of accessibility, of disability supports, to let them know that you can get extra time on your test as a college student. You can take your test outside of the classroom. All those things are available to you. Um, uh, so like having that sort of exposure, and then also giving them an opportunity to meet adults who are in the world of work, who are pursuing careers, and I would say a variety of careers, right? Like, yes, they need to meet the mechanics and the carpenters, but they also need to meet the people who are this in the C-suites of companies, because dyslexias show up in all those spaces. You know, we are highly represented within the entrepreneurial class. Study by Dr. Logan in London looked at American entrepreneurs and found that somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% of American entrepreneurs are folks with learning challenges. And so our young people need to see that. They need to know that. So that exposure is important. The other thing that is really important for educators, and
Mm.
so I'm speaking to all the teachers directly who will listen to this,
Yes.
is that in many of our schools, we have teachers who are closeted dyslexics, who are closeted folks with ADHD, who
Yeah.
struggled in school, who had very difficult times. And many times they had that one teacher that made a difference in their life. And that helped them to decide, you know what, I'm going to be an educator and I'm going to go back and I'm going to be a difference for the next generation of students.
Hmm.
But we don't talk about our challenges, right? We don't talk about being dyslexic. And so, there's a quote that is attributed to Gandhi that you have to be the change that you want to see, right? And so it is important for our educators to talk about the challenges that they have in schools. It's also important for the folks who, are the heads of school to create an environment, a workplace environment where our educators can be open about being dyslexic. Because it's part of that exposure. It's important for our students to see themselves in their teachers. So yeah, so like that these are all the things, that and many more that our educators need to do to help, make sure that transition into the adult world is successful for our students.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it just goes to show how much representation matters. If you don't see it, you don't think it's there. If you don't see it, you don't think it's possible. So when you do see it, you aspire to become it, and you try to, get to that point. So thank you very much. I can see that. Oh yeah. So TD underscore official one says, I have a dictionary in my locker at work. Why do you have a dictionary in your locker at work?
Yeah,
um,
that quick reference, right? That quick reference. Yeah.
I don't quite remember the last time I saw a dictionary. I think I'd most likely just use Google.
Right.
But I guess if you're used to a certain kind of reference, you get really stuck on that, and if it works for you, hey, well, by all means, knock it out of the park. And then says again, one has not to be shy of his or her deficit. 100%. Do you have anything to say to that?
The piece about the dictionary in their
Yeah.
locker at work. Um, Yeah, so for me, like my dyslexia is so intense that like a dictionary is kind of useless, right? You kind of
I
have to
know,
know how to
right? Where do you
spell a word in
find
order to look it
it?
up. At least for me, that's how the dyslexia shows up in my life. Um, and so speech to text, right? Speech to text on Google has been, like very, very powerful. But
Yeah.
it reminds me of a friend of mine
Mm,
who um, works in law enforcement, and him and I went through college together. He's also dyslexic. He married
right.
a teacher. I know a lot of dyslexics that marry teachers, and there's a running joke. You marry for spelling, right? You marry for spelling. So, but he married an educator, and he was telling me how like his wife was telling me how there are times where the phone will ring. It's him,
Right.
and uh, she'll
It's called
pick
into
up, she'll pick up, and there's no hello, there's nothing. He'll just say a word,
all
right?
that.
And it'll just be like, um, complication, right? And then she knows what that is that he's in an office and he's surrounded by
Yeah,
people and he can't
and
figure out how to spell this word.
the
And
word.
then she will say how to spell whatever that word is, and then he hangs up, right? And that's all it is, right? So, um, but that's what he's got to do, right? It's what he's got to do to get through work, right?
Yeah,
So, and he's in a space where like he doesn't feel like he can be open about that as a challenge.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so we all figure out these little tricks to get through our jobs, right? Whether it be that dictionary stash in the
yeah,
locker, or that phone that using that hotline, that lifeline to connect
yeah.
with our support system. So yeah, I love it all. I love it all.
It, it is so funny. It's so funny to me because I can completely relate. Before I even figured that I could use Google to spell certain things, um, I used to call a friend. There was
That's
this
it.
one friend of mine I called. And like you said, I wouldn't say hello, I wouldn't say hi, I wouldn't ask her about anything. I'll just go spell biscuit. And then she would spell it, and then I'll be like, wait, wait, wait. I will get a pen and a paper, I'll write it down, and I'll be like, bye. I probably sometimes don't even say bye because that's just what I wanted. And she has given it to me, and then that's all. So I can completely relate with him. And he can't use the exact words. And I figured eventually that on Google there's this microphone that you can just hit on, and then say the word that you wanted to spell, and it will spell it. And of course, there's Grammarly. There's so many other things that we can use these days that we don't quite need to call someone,
Yep.
except we don't have internet. Then definitely we are going to call someone. I can see here that so Dr. Tikolo, who is the MD of Dyslexia Nigeria, she's here and she says hello. Hi,
Hello.
Dr. T. It's nice to see you here. So we have once again, she's back, or he's back. I once worked in a remote area I see. That's why
Had
you were using
no
the
internet
dictionary.
signal. Right,
There we
right.
go. There we go.
You
There
gotta
we go.
go. You gotta
Okay.
go analog. Yeah, no doubt.
You have to find a way. That's what we talked about us being very resilient. You have to find a way to do what you have to do. So yeah, thank
Yeah,
you so much for that.
and it's like even in so the support program that I was a part of in college.
Yeah.
One of the things they gave us was it was like um, maybe one sheet of paper, but two sides, and it was just a list of commonly misspelled words that college students needed. And it was just a sheet of paper, right? And this was, of course, before mobile technology was what it is today. I graduated from high school in 1996, so Microsoft Word and the personal computer had really, really kind of just started to kind of come into its own. But
Yeah.
there were no mobile devices like we had now. So yeah, I mean there are times when like that paper, whether it be trying to navigate back in the day or being in areas where you don't have that signal,
Yeah.
we still gotta figure it out. Even in math. So when I was in university and I was a mathematics major. When I declared myself in that major, I became a math tutor. And again, my working memory isn't all that great. And so, and
Of course.
I think I have it somewhere here, but I have a little journal,
Mm.
and I filled it just pages of equations. The things that I knew I was going to need on a regular basis. And it was because there was always just like one little term, one little variable, something that I knew I wouldn't be able to recall 100%. And so I had a book just full of them, and that I could just call up without having to work too hard. So.
I mean, from someone who struggled with mathematics to having a major in it, that is insane. That's crazy. I still use my fingers when I'm trying to. Yeah, I don't. Math
Um,
is not my
I
favorite subject. I don't do that.
I do too, but I'll be straight up. Like, given my challenges with spelling and reading, it was the easiest thing to do. There was less of an emphasis on spelling and writing. Um, and
Right. That's
yeah, it was so much of it was about, just your time at a desk, right? You just sit there and bang through problems, and a lot of sort of memorization. And at least for me, the way that I'm wired, the system, there was just a logic to it that I understood
right.
much more clearer than the way that our words are put together.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, one of the strengths of dyslexia is problem solving. So if you are going to solve those problems, you'd most likely find a way around it a lot quicker than having to remember the alphabets and where to place them, especially if they pop up twice in a word. It's the most trickiest thing ever.
Yeah.
Um, I would like us to move on to parents now. What advice would you give to parents of children with dyslexia? And just in order to help them advocate for their child effectively, what advice would you give to them, especially if they're still sort of in denial? Uh, they don't want to use the word because they feel it's something terrible, or they are sort of understanding what dyslexia is. How would you help them advocate effectively for their child?
So I want to acknowledge the space of being in denial, right? I don't Out of all the families that I've ever met with and worked with, I don't think any of that comes from a negative place. It comes from a place of love
Yeah,
and protection,
of course.
um, and wanting to make sure that your child can go through this world with as little pain as possible. So I just want to acknowledge that. Um, but I also want to speak to a few things. So one is I think we have to recognize that there is a oftentimes a genetic component that comes with dyslexia, right?
Mhm,
Which means chances are mom, dad,
mhm.
or grandma or granddad was dyslexic, is dyslexic now, struggled through school. And so they have experienced some of the pain, some of the shame, some of the embarrassment that they're seeing their child go through.
Of
Um,
course.
and again, I think oftentimes those feelings of like not wanting to say the word dyslexia, maybe even not wanting to pursue supports that are needed, are again coming from a place of wanting to save a child from that pain. But here's
Right.
what I know is true, right? Is that it is through knowledge that we are empowered, right? And your young person is smart. Your child is smart. They are intelligent, and they are going to know something's going on with me, right? There's a reason why I can't spell. There's a reason why I can't read as like everybody else. And what you don't want is for them to start filling that void of information with
Right.
nonsense from TV, right? Nonsense from the movies, nonsense from folks who don't know and care about them. Because what that nonsense is going to tell them is that they are not smart, that they are not capable, that they are not able to do the things that we all know they have the potential to do. And so I, the better thing to do is to face the fact that they're dyslexic, right? And to have
Good.
that conversation and explore it. And if you have to talk about that, that you had challenges in the school, then do that. One of the greatest gifts my mother has given me was that when I was in primary school, I was 17 years old. I had one more year before graduation. I was in a very dark place. I was in a very like emotionally wrecked place. I was going through what I self-describe as an emotional breakdown. And my mother said to me, my mother is one of nine siblings. All of my aunts and uncles on that side of the family are very well accomplished. They are artists, they are engineers, educators. They work the medical fields, right? Like very, very like, and when they went through school, they were for the most part all really high flyers. And so my mother was kind of, one of the younger children, and she talks about going through school and the teacher saying, "Well, wow, you're not as smart as your brothers and sisters are," right? And her saying how, like if there was special education then, they would have put her in it. And so it was her being transparent with me about the challenges that she had experienced going through school. And because of the love and the admiration that I had for her, right, it let me know that no, like I could get through this, right? But it was that vulnerability, and I think both for for our parents, but also for our educators, we think like we have to show up in this world and be perfect, right? And what I know is that the educators that I remember the most, who I connected the most with, were human.
Fun.
They were the most human. They talked about their flaws. They talked about their challenges. And why is that powerful? Because I can't learn anything from someone who's perfect, right? Like I need to see, okay, like I messed up and then I did these two or three things differently, and then I was able to, like, because we're all going to mess up. We're all going to deal with these sort of challenges.
Of course.
So the I think having that conversation, not running away from talking about dyslexia, and doing it in a way where you feel vulnerable, right? And you're open and you're honest, I think is one of the more powerful things we can do. And then the other piece is like, and I think it's an important part of having this conversation, is that you do have to educate yourself. So mom and dad, you have to spend the time listening to programs like this, taking part in courses, going to trainings, watching documentaries, reading books, learning as much as you can about dyslexia, because it still is not something that we talk about all the time throughout society, right? It isn't the thing that really I think should get the sort of focus that it deserves. And so for many of us, we do have to educate ourselves on this neurological difference. Um, and it's not only sort of, and I'm not saying you have to understand it from, say, like a medical or a neuropsych sort of standpoint, but but we should understand like how it shows up in different people's lives, but also find those examples of people, right, who are
Yeah.
like your child that you can connect them to. So if the viewers go to my YouTube channel, I have a channel on YouTube. Just go to LeDerick Horne, it'll come up. But I have a playlist called "Celebrating Black History and People with Disabilities," and within there, like the I think the overwhelming majority of those folks that are featured within that series are folks who are dyslexic. It is the
Mm.
Muhammad Ali's, Harry Belafonte, the incredible sci-fi writer Octavia Butler. Um, Being able to show our folks those sort of examples. One of my good friends and colleagues is Dr. Sean Anthony Robinson, and Dr. Robinson. He's got a series of graphic novels called Dr. Dyslexia Dude. And he's a a black man here in the States, and he's created this incredible like superhero character. You know, that is this embodiment of of what us as folks who have dyslexia can be like, bringing those kind of narratives and those kind of experiences into our young people's lives. I think it's one of the more powerful things we can do, because it helps our young people to build that bridge of hope from where they are to where we want them to be.
Thank you so much. I mean, you definitely knocked it out of the park there. Thank you. Um, uh, like I said earlier, representation matters a whole lot, and having to see that at a young age, especially with people you admire and look up to, you look at it and you go, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I can find a way around this. And if someone as mighty and powerful as a parent, is able to talk about the early difficulties they went through with you, it can ease off the pressure, the stress that a young person can embody. during those process. So thank you so much for that. It's quite amazing that we've actually come to an hour already. And it's they do say when you are having fun, time flies really fast. So we just want to say thank you so much, LeDerick, for your time. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for the examples. Thank you for everything. I mean, it's so nice. It's quite an honor to have spoken with you today. And I do know that a lot of people who will watch this live eventually and who have watched it has learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I haven't been to Nigeria yet. So when I come, I hope we're able to connect in person and hang out.
The section Nigeria is here. Just let us know, and we will show up.
No doubt. No doubt. And then also I mentioned kind of earlier and throughout, but I have created this video course for educators, for family members. So if everyone takes a look at my bio, there's a link there, link tree there, and there's information on how they can pick it up. So thank you for having me, and I hope we're able to connect again in the future.
Definitely, we certainly hope so. This video would be on our page, and I will try to make it a collaborative post. So if you would like to have it on your page as well, so that whoever sees it could have easier access to your page, and they could get whatever information they would need there. You nailed it all. The session was very impactful. I know, right? It was, and it just went by really quick. I just looked at the time and I was like, "It's 1 o'clock already." Wow.
Yeah, the sun has come up since we've been talking.
Just before we go, could you kindly give us, if you can, of course, just a really brief poem for us to take with us?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the poem I'm best known for is a poem called "Dare to Dream," and
Okay.
it's a poem that I wrote for primary schools, primary school students, but I think everybody listening will appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me see. So let me see. It starts out like a wedding. It goes, we are gathered here today to bear witness to the union of two beautiful people. Yes, today is the day that we merge who you are with who you want to be, making the vision and the reality one, an integration born of communication and made tangible by your commitment to yourselves. Now, I know some of you may be a little afraid, but don't let cold feet stop you from jumping the broom, from taking the first step, from beginning a journey that will transform your life. Yeah, I know some of you may be a little afraid, but you see, it's my job to be Harriet Tubman-like with my movements in verse. So if I have to steal away just for us to make a way, well then my hand will be the first one in the cookie jar of self-advocacy. I'll use these sticky fingers to pickpocket the pocket of self-determination. And if I have to grand theft auto the Mercedes-Benz of a quality education, well then they might as well leave the doors unlocked and the key in the ignition, because I'm gone in 60 seconds and ain't nothing, y'all. I mean, nothing gonna stand in my way. You see, it's my job to unlock doors, unshackle minds, break through glass ceilings, motivate, inspire, and challenge you. I'm here to challenge you. And so I dare you. I dare you to sit out there in those seats and not feel moved by the testimony of these brave souls who have come before you as examples of excellence. I dare you. I dare you to look into the mirror without imagining. See yourself as yourself, a diamond that might need a little bit of polish, but whose beauty has always existed. I dare you. I dare you to step, bounce, and move to your own rhythm. Excite minds, and time will redefine this system. I write lines designed to embrace and kiss, plus supercharged like import strapped with nitrous. This is a revolution, a fight for inclusion. Segregation is no solution. Brown versus Ed is how I'm proving we deserve the best. Nothing more and nothing less. Every child gets left behind when all we focus on are tests. And so I dare you to judge yourselves by a different standard, to lift as you climb, and to fight like gladiators to become master and commander of your own beautiful minds. But above all else, I dare you to dream. Dare to dream, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have heard that poem before, so it's nice to actually just hear you say it, and you're saying it like Yes, so it's really nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't thank you enough. That was so amazing. That was so good. Thank you,
You're very
thank
welcome.
you. I don't
Thank you.
even know what else to say aside from thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a great time. We did, and I'm so happy that we got to do this. So thank you to everyone who came into the live, who dropped out, who came back in. The live would be it's already recorded, so once we end the live it would be on our pages, so you can go and watch them and share them with as many people as possible. We spoke with the individuals with dyslexia, we spoke to individuals with dyslexia, to parents, to educators, so the whole live contains messages for literally different groups, so you can send it to as many people as possible. Thank you so much. I need a manuscript, please, of the poem, or
I think of the
of
poem. Yeah, so
okay,
it's featured
okay,
within my book, Empowering Students with Hidden Disabilities: A Path to Pride and Success. And then I also have 2 albums of my poetry that you can get on Spotify and iTunes and that sort of
great,
thing.
great. So you hear it, you know where to get it from. Thank you so much once again. And LeDerick, thank you. We do hope you have a good day. I know your day is literally just starting. Once again, thank you so much for making it so early. I believe it's probably 7 a.m. where you
It's
are now.
8 now, 8:06.
Eight. Okay, 8:06. Yeah, it's 1:06 here. So I think we're 5 hours ahead. So thank you for making it so early. We really appreciate it. Have an amazing day ahead.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye everyone. Thank you. See you next week.